If you'd asked me 10 years ago what my life would look like now, I probably would have said exactly this. Married, a kid, a stable job, a house with a backyard that needs mowing every other week. It's funny how ordinary happiness can feel once you've lived in it long enough. Like air, something you don't think about until it's gone. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Melissa and I met in the most unromantic way possible at the DMV. I was standing in line, half asleep and holding a crumpled ticket number in my hand. She was ahead of me, trying to renew her license after her wallet had been stolen, visibly irritated at the guy behind the counter. I remember she turned around and made some sarcastic comment to no one in particular about how the place felt like purgatory. I laughed. She looked at me like she didn't expect anyone to get the joke, and then we just started talking. That was it. No setup, no dating app. Just a weird, random Tuesday at the DMV. We got lunch afterward, diner food at a place down the block. She had grilled cheese and tomato soup. I had a turkey club. We talked for almost 3 hours like we hadn't just met. I still remember how she told stories, like everything was just a little funnier and a little brighter when she said it. She made you feel like you were in on something. It moved fast after that, but not in a reckless way. It just felt easy. We started dating, met each other's families, moved in together about a year later. We got married when I was 26 and she was 24, nothing fancy, just a small ceremony in her parents' backyard. It drizzled that day, but no one cared. She wore this simple dress with a lace back and looked like the most beautiful person I'd ever seen. Now we're in our mid-30s, and life is full. That's the best word for it. We've got a 9-year-old son, Noah, who's all energy and imagination. We're in that stage of life where the calendar fills itself, school projects, work meetings, grocery runs, swim practice, birthday parties, everything overlapping. I run a small home renovation business. Melissa works as an office manager for a design firm. She's insanely organized, always has some kind of to-do list stuck to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a pineapple. We live in a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood just outside the city. It's the kind of place where people wave when you walk your dog and kids ride their bikes in a loop until dinner. Not fancy, but it's ours. I spent 2 summers redoing the deck in the back, and now we have dinner out there on warm evenings. Melissa plants herbs in these little terracotta pots she swears are low maintenance. They're not. I end up watering them more often than she does. We do family movie nights on Fridays. Saturday mornings, Noah and I make pancakes while Melissa sleeps in, even though she always gets up halfway through and steals a bite. Sundays are for cleaning, laundry, and a grocery run we usually regret starting too late. It's a rhythm. Not always exciting, but familiar in a good way. Like a well-worn pair of jeans. I used to think love had to be dramatic, fireworks, grand gestures. But now, I think real love is this. Folding laundry together, knowing how she likes her coffee, arguing over which way the toilet paper should face, then laughing about it 5 minutes later. It's not perfect, but it's home. And for a long time, that felt like everything I ever needed. Sometimes I think about how different we are, Melissa and me. She's the type who reads the fine print. I skim everything and hope for the best. She's organized, punctual, good with details. I'm a little more scatterbrained, forget birthdays unless they're written on a calendar. But somehow we fit. Melissa has always had this quiet confidence about her. She doesn't raise her voice unless she's singing in the car, and she has this way of making people feel seen without trying. She remembers coworkers' kids' names, brings soup to sick neighbors, always buys extra at the grocery store just in case. People like her immediately. I did too. She keeps our house running, the bills, the appointments, the birthday gifts wrapped 3 days in advance. I'd be lost without her spreadsheets. Literally. I wouldn't even know when my dentist appointment is without her text reminders. And she's funny, not loud or showy, but sharp. Her humor sneaks up on you. A dry one-liner over breakfast that makes you snort coffee through your nose. Our days are predictable, but I've never seen that as a bad thing. I leave for job sites early, usually with a thermos of coffee she hands me while still in her robe. Noah's lunch is already packed. Sometimes she slips in a sticky note with a dumb dad joke I told the night before, written in her neat little handwriting. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field. Corny stuff like that. Noah rolls his eyes, but I know he loves it. She works until about 5 or 6, depending on deadlines. Her office is about 20 minutes from home. She carpools with one of her coworkers, a woman named Elise, a couple times a week, which has been great for our budget with gas prices lately. I pick up Noah from school most days. We'll grab groceries together, or just head home and play Legos or kick a soccer ball around in the yard. By the time Melissa's home, there's usually something halfway burning on the stove, and Noah's clothes are mysteriously covered in grass stains. We try to eat dinner together every night, no phones at the table. It's one of those little rules we both agreed on early in our marriage, and it's stuck. Melissa asks Noah about his day and actually listens, not the distracted nodding parents sometimes do, but really listens. She's good at making space like that. Weekends are slower. On Sundays, Melissa loves dragging us to the farmer's market even though it's always the same stalls. I tease her about buying overpriced candles and vegetables we don't know how to cook, but secretly, I enjoy those mornings. Walking behind her with my hand resting on her lower back, the three of us moving through the crowd like a little unit. Safe. Simple. Ours. People say marriage is work, and I guess that's true. But with Melissa, the work never felt like labor. It was more like rhythm, give and take, a shared language. There were things we just understood about each other without needing to say them out loud. And maybe that's what made everything feel so solid, so unshakable. There were moments I'd catch myself just watching her, like on Sunday mornings when she'd sit on the couch with her legs tucked under her, flipping through a recipe book she never actually cooked from. Or when she was brushing Noah's hair behind his ear while he focused on building some overly complicated Lego set. And I'd feel this strange ache in my chest, not sadness, just gratitude. Like I couldn't believe I got this life. We were coming up on our 10th anniversary this past spring, and for the first time in a while, I started thinking about planning something bigger than just dinner. Melissa always downplayed anniversaries, said we didn't need to make a fuss. But I wanted to. Not because anything was wrong, just because I still felt lucky. Because I wanted her to know I didn't take her, or any of this, for granted. Noah had grown into this funny, sensitive kid who was half me, half her. He loved drawing, making up stories, asking questions that felt a little too grown up sometimes. Melissa was the kind of mom who could calm him down from a full-on meltdown without raising her voice. I was more the let's wrestle the energy out of you type. It worked. We balanced each other. At night, after Noah was asleep, we'd sit on the couch, each doing our own thing, me scrolling through renovation ideas or invoices, her catching up on emails or watching some reality baking show. We didn't talk the whole time. We didn't need to. Sometimes she'd absent-mindedly rest her feet in my lap, and I'd just rub them gently while we sat in silence. Other nights, we'd talk about work, Noah, the neighbors, the news, or nothing at all. There was a kind of peace in that quiet, a comfort you earn after years of living side by side, knowing the other person's quirks, rhythms, needs without having to ask. She kept the house beautiful in her way. Not like Instagram perfect. We had scuffed baseboards and a few mismatched mugs, but it felt lived in, loved. There were always fresh flowers in a jar on the table. Not store-bought, either. Melissa had a thing for cutting them from the side of the road or our own little garden patch and back. Wild looks better than perfect, she'd say. Even now, when I think about what happiness looked like, it was this. Melissa in the kitchen humming to herself. Noah laughing from the other room. A breeze coming through the screen door. The smell of something baking that we didn't need but ate anyway. It wasn't exciting or flashy or the kind of thing people post online to prove they're happy. It was just steady, ordinary, real. And it felt unbreakable. Or so I thought. It happened on a Monday. Melissa stood in the bathroom doorway, holding a white stick in one hand and covering her mouth with the other. She didn't say anything, just stared at me like she didn't trust her voice. I was standing at the kitchen sink, rinsing out a coffee mug. I turned, saw her face, and everything in me froze. "You're pregnant?" I asked, though I already knew. She nodded. Slowly, eyes wide, blinking fast. Then she smiled, not the full, easy kind she used to give, but a quieter one, almost cautious. I crossed the room in 3 steps and pulled her into me. We laughed. I think she cried. Or maybe I did. It was hard to tell. We weren't trying, but we weren't exactly preventing it either. I had assumed, after Noah, that we'd maybe just stay a family of 3. Melissa had mentioned once or twice that she didn't know if she wanted to go through the baby phase again. I didn't push. We had a good thing going. But standing there with her in my arms, that second little line burned into both our brains. It felt like the universe handing us something we didn't know we still wanted. She told Noah that night. Made a whole game out of it. Wrapped up the pregnancy test in a little box and told him it was an early birthday present. He opened it, confused at first, and then she explained. "You're gonna be a big brother." He looked at her, then at me, then back at her. Is it a boy or a girl? We don't know yet, she said. Can it be a dog? We all cracked up. It felt good. Honest. Like the kind of joy you don't question. But something lingered with me after, a strange sort of distance in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. A quiet tension in her shoulders that hadn't been there with Noah. I chalked it up to nerves. It had been almost a decade since she'd done this. Of course, it was going to be overwhelming. But as the days passed, I started noticing things. Little things. She was more tired than I remembered her being the first time. More on edge. She stopped taking the carpool with Elise and started driving alone again, saying she needed the flexibility with morning sickness. Fair enough. She also started working longer hours, staying late more often, saying she was helping wrap up a big project. At home, she was still. Melissa. Still tucking Noah in at night, still organizing the freezer by expiration date, still making those wildflower bouquets for the kitchen table. But I started catching her lost in thought more often. Zoned out in the middle of a conversation. Smiling at her phone a little too long, then slipping it under a pillow. Nothing obvious. Nothing I could put my finger on. Just something. I didn't say anything. She was pregnant. Emotional. Maybe even scared. I didn't want to start poking holes in something that might just be stress. Instead, I leaned in harder, picked up more around the house, took Noah on longer weekend outings so she could rest. I bought her favorite snacks without her asking. Rubbed her back when she couldn't get comfortable at night. I told myself this was a hard season, but we were in it together. Still, in quiet moments, I'd catch myself wondering, if this was everything we wanted, why did it feel like I was loving her through a window? I don't know exactly when the feeling started. It wasn't like flipping a switch. More like walking into a room you've been in 1,000 times and realizing, for some reason, it feels unfamiliar. It was late July, and Melissa had just entered her second trimester. The worst of the morning sickness had passed, and she had more energy again. That's what she said, at least. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Not dramatic. Not even anything I could point to clearly. Just this low, persistent hum beneath everything, like a tension I wasn't supposed to notice. She still smiled, still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. But her eyes didn't hold the same warmth. She'd be mid-sentence and trail off, distracted. Sometimes she'd pause before answering a question, like she had to reset herself. I told myself she was just tired. Growing a human is no small feat, and she was still working full-time, balancing meetings, keeping the house in order, parenting Noah. Maybe it was me who was being too sensitive. Maybe I just missed the way things used to feel when life wasn't this busy. But the little things kept stacking up. She started locking her phone. Not just setting it down screen first like she used to, but actually locking it, even in the house. I only noticed because we were watching a movie one night, and she got up to grab popcorn. Her phone buzzed. I picked it up without thinking to hand it to her, and it asked for a passcode. A new one. When she came back, I handed it over and didn't say anything. And she didn't either. Just thanked me quickly and set it down again, screen first. That was the first time I felt something like a crack. It wasn't just that. She'd been staying later at work more often, blaming back-to-back meetings or catching up on paperwork. Sometimes I'd ask what she had for lunch that day and she'd pause, like she had to invent an answer. Little delays. Weird pauses. A beat too long between question and reply. You start to notice those things when someone's been part of your everyday rhythm for years. I don't want to make her sound like a stranger, she wasn't. She still rubbed my shoulders when I came home sore. She still curled up next to me some nights and asked about my day. But it was like the version of her I knew had split, like the Melissa I loved was still there, but I only saw parts of her at a time. And I started having dreams. Not about her cheating, nothing so clear-cut. Just these murky, uneasy dreams where I was looking for her in a crowded room and I couldn't find her. Or she was calling my name from somewhere I couldn't reach. I'd wake up with this hollow ache in my chest, unable to shake the feeling that something important was slipping away from me. I didn't tell her. I didn't want to add to her stress. I told myself I was imagining things, making problems where there weren't any. Hormones. Pregnancy. Work. Life. All of it could explain everything. And yet, there was this moment, one night, after Noah had gone to bed, when we were brushing our teeth side by side. I looked over at her in the mirror and realized I didn't recognize her expression. She looked tired, worn out. But it was more than that. She looked distant, like her mind was somewhere else entirely. She caught me watching her and gave me a soft, closed-lip smile. And I smiled back. But even as I did, I felt something unfamiliar settle inside me. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't want to, but I felt it just the same. We found out about the second pregnancy on a rainy Thursday. Melissa had been feeling off for about a week. Headaches, nausea, the kind of fatigue that went beyond just being tired. At first, we chalked it up to stress, or the tail end of a cold Noah had brought home from school. But when she skipped dinner 3 nights in a row and practically fell asleep on the couch mid-sentence, I told her to take a test, just to rule it out. We weren't trying, not even close. With everything going on, work, parenting, the stress of her job, and my long hours, another baby hadn't even been a discussion. Our lives were full, maybe even too full. But that morning, she came out of the bathroom holding the test, blinking at me with a strange, unreadable look on her face. "It's positive," she said. I sat there for a moment, staring at her, waiting for her to smile, waiting for that familiar flicker of joy to show up in her eyes, like it had when we found out about Noah, or even the first time she was pregnant again, before the miscarriage. But she didn't smile. Not really. Her face was pale, her lips parted slightly like she'd just realized something she couldn't say out loud. And then, almost mechanically, she reached for my hand and placed the test in it, like proof. I remember laughing softly. "Well, okay. She nodded. "I didn't think I could be. I mean, I've been careful, but—" She trailed off. There was a long silence between us. Then, as if waking up from a trance, she blinked, smiled tightly, and said, "Well, looks like our hands are going to be full again." I hugged her, kissed her temple, told her we'd figure it out, that we always did. But even as I said the words, something inside me pulled back. Not because I didn't want the baby. I did, or I would have, if it had felt like something we were in together. But Melissa, she felt miles away. The next few days were a blur. We told Noah the news, and he was thrilled. "Another little brother?" he asked. "Or maybe a sister this time?" Melissa smiled and said, "We'll see." But even then, something in her smile felt rehearsed. Almost careful. She was more irritable than usual. Distant, too. She'd flinch when I touched her arm or reached for her hand. She'd blame it on hormones, on fatigue, on headaches. And maybe she was right. Maybe it was just the pregnancy messing with her emotions. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was happening, something that had nothing to do with hormones. Her phone was always on silent now, always face down. Sometimes she'd take it into the bathroom or keep it clutched in her pocket even when we were watching a movie. I never said anything. I didn't want to be that guy, the paranoid, insecure husband. But there was a growing space between us. A silence that filled the room even when we were talking. I'd look at her and wonder if she felt it too. If she noticed how quiet our laughs had become. How quickly her eyes darted away from mine when we made eye contact. At night, she started going to bed early, claiming she needed rest. But more often than not, I'd find her lying awake, staring at the ceiling. I'd ask if she was okay, and she'd always say, "Just tired." Sometimes she'd kiss my cheek and turn her back to me. And I'd lie there, listening to her breathe, trying to convince myself that nothing was wrong. That this was just what marriage looked like in the middle of life, busy, chaotic, messy. That the love was still there, even if it had changed shape. But in the quiet, I couldn't help but wonder, was I imagining things? Or was I being prepared for something I didn't want to see? By the time Melissa was about 5 months pregnant, we'd settled into what looked, from the outside, like a peaceful routine. She was still working fewer hours now, by doctor's orders, and I was trying to keep things steady at home. Noah was gearing up for a school play. I started turning the spare room into a nursery again. We even went out to dinner one night, just the two of us. It had been months. And for a moment that night, it felt like we were finding our way back to each other. She wore that navy dress she always used to say made her feel confident, even though it didn't quite zip up all the way anymore. She laughed at one of my dumb jokes. She ordered sparkling water and talked about maybe going part-time after the baby came. I held her hand across the table, and she didn't pull away. But then our waiter asked if we were having a boy or girl. There was a pause, just a second too long, and then Melissa smiled and said, "We haven't decided if we're finding out yet." That threw me. We had talked about this 2 weeks ago. She was firm, wanted to be surprised this time, like we were with Noah. I remembered the conversation clearly, sitting in the kitchen, her hands on her belly, saying how rare surprises were these days. But now she acted like we hadn't discussed it at all. Afterward, in the car, I asked her about it, gently. "I thought we agreed not to find out the sex," I said. She looked out the window, quiet for a second. "Oh, right. Yeah, I guess I just said that without thinking." It wasn't a big deal. People forget things. But I couldn't stop thinking about the way she said it, like she had to search for the right answer. Like she was double-checking something before speaking. There were other things, too. I noticed she stopped talking about her day unless I asked. And even then, her answers were short, almost mechanical. When I'd press, "Who were you meeting with?" or "How did that deadline go?" she'd give me this polite smile and say, "You wouldn't know them," or "It's boring stuff." That wasn't like her. She used to ramble, complain, vent. Noah noticed too, in his own way. He asked me one night why Mommy was always on her phone in the garage. I didn't know what he meant. "She says she's calling the doctor," he said. "But she never talks about babies." That stuck in my head for days. I never said anything to her, didn't want to come off as accusatory. But I started noticing that, yeah, sometimes she'd go into the garage or laundry room to make a call or get some air, and come back 10, 15 minutes later, a little more cheerful, a little more distracted. Again, maybe I was just overthinking. She was pregnant, uncomfortable, emotionally stretched thin. Maybe she just needed space. And yet, I started waking up in the middle of the night with this restless ache in my chest. Not panic, not sadness, just something unsettled. Something my body felt before my brain could name it. I found myself replaying conversations with her in my head, trying to figure out if I was missing something, if she had told me something that didn't add up. But it wasn't like that. There were no glaring red flags, no shouting, no fights, just silence and small gaps I hadn't noticed before. Sometimes she'd touch my shoulder in passing, and it felt like the hand of someone I used to know. I still told myself this was just what marriage looked like after a decade, a little weather-worn, stretched thinner by time and responsibility. But late at night, when the house was quiet and she was curled on her side, facing away from me, I couldn't help but wonder. What if this wasn't just a hard season? What if something had already shifted, and I was just the last to feel it? It was a Saturday morning. The kind where nothing seems unusual until everything is. Melissa had gone out early to run errands. At least, that's what she said. She kissed me on the cheek before leaving, car keys in hand, said she might stop by a baby boutique she'd heard about across town. She looked calm, hair pinned back, lipstick, which she hadn't worn in weeks. I didn't think much of it at the time. Noah and I were having one of our lazy mornings, cereal, cartoons, him sprawled across the floor with his sketch pad while I tried to catch up on emails. Around 10:30, he came into the kitchen holding something. "Daddy," he said, "can I show you something?" I glanced down. In his hands was a phone. Not mine. Not the one Melissa normally used either. It was a different model, older, scratched up. For a second, I didn't even register what I was looking at. "Where did you get that?" I asked. "It was in the shoe box in Mommy's closet," he said, almost proudly. "I was looking for the laser pointer." I took the phone gently from him. "Did you open it?" He shrugged. It didn't have a code. The screen lit up in my hand. No wallpaper. Just the default gray background. But there were messages. So many messages. I don't know what made me tap them. Maybe I already knew, somewhere deep down. Maybe I was too scared not to. There were texts going back months. Most of the names were saved under codes. Just initials or workplace references. But one thread stood out. Constant messages, day and night. Emojis. Hearts. And then I saw it. A name I knew. A man I never expected to see in this context. It was Luke. My friend. My best man at our wedding. I stood there frozen, reading them. Words that hit me like tiny knives. "I miss you. Can't stop thinking about last night. I wish I could wake up next to you." And then the photos. Selfies. A video clip, barely 10 seconds. Blurry. Loud. Melissa's voice. His. Their faces. Their hands. Her body. Our bed. Noah was tugging at my arm. "Dad? Are you okay?" I must have been shaking. I don't remember when I sat down. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't blink. I wanted to hurl the phone across the room, but I couldn't move. Then Noah said something else. "I think that baby isn't yours." I looked at him. His little face scrunched up, confused and concerned. "Why would you say that?" He reached into the pocket of his pajama pants and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Crumpled. Worn. He handed it to me like he didn't know what it was. "I found it in the same box," he said. It looked important. I unfolded it with trembling hands. It was a printed email. From a testing lab. I scanned the words quickly, heart pounding. Paternity analysis, negative. The name under alleged father was mine. The fetus, the one Melissa was carrying, wasn't mine. I don't remember what I said. I think I thanked Noah. I think I told him I needed a minute. I know I hugged him. I know I walked into the bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub, shaking. The phone, the messages, the video, the DNA test. Every inch of doubt I tried to suppress came roaring into the light. All the late nights, the distant smiles, the locked phone, the gentle shifts I told myself were nothing. They were something. They were everything. And all of it was real. Melissa, the woman I loved, the mother of my son, the person I built my life with, had been lying to me for God knows how long. And not just lying. Sleeping with someone else. Hiding a second life. Carrying a child that wasn't mine. And I had no idea until our son, our beautiful, innocent 9-year-old son, put the truth in my hands. I didn't tell her that day. I didn't say a word when she walked through the door, humming softly, shopping bags in hand. She dropped her keys in the bowl by the door, kicked off her shoes, and asked what Noah and I had done while she was out. I smiled, told her we played games, ate cereal, watched cartoons, and then I said something I hadn't planned. I've got a work trip coming up. Just one night. She nodded, barely listening, already halfway into the kitchen. Okay. Let me know if you need me to pack anything. That night, I lay awake next to her, eyes open in the dark while she breathed softly, one hand resting on the curve of her stomach, a child she thought I believed was mine. I stared at the ceiling, heart pounding, rehearsing everything I needed to do. The next morning, I called into work, said I needed personal leave. Then I started packing, not for a trip, for a clean break. I told Noah we were going on an adventure. I didn't give him details, just said we'd be staying at Grandpa's for a while, and that it was a secret, just for us. He nodded solemnly, like he understood more than I wanted him to. I made sure to keep things light, playful. No stress, no fear. Just the two of us, like it had been so many weekends before. Before we left, I printed everything. The messages, the video, the DNA report. I saved it all to a USB and placed it gently next to a handwritten note. Then, on the kitchen table, the one we'd eaten 1,000 family dinners at, I left it all under a coffee mug. The same mug she'd once given me with the words "World's Best Dad" printed in fading blue letters. The note was short, just 4 words. I know everything. Goodbye. No drama. No screaming. No final fight. I took her lies and handed them back, quietly. Then we left. I didn't answer when she called. Or when she texted. She tried everything. I saw the notifications come through for hours. Where are you? Is Noah okay? Please, talk to me. We can fix this. It's not what you think. I love you. But none of it mattered. I'd changed my number that afternoon. I'd set up a temporary custody arrangement with my lawyer that morning. And now, I was sitting in my childhood bedroom at my father's house, watching Noah fall asleep with his favorite stuffed dinosaur in his arms. Safe. Unaware. Unburdened. Melissa had lied. For months. She'd let me dream about a baby that wasn't mine. Let me build a nursery. Let me rub her back at night and tell her everything was going to be okay. She let me believe in a future she was never planning to share. But I wasn't going to let her twist that knife anymore. I had no intention of screaming in her face. No urge to confront her with fists or threats. She wasn't worth it. Not anymore. What I wanted, what I needed, was distance. For me. For Noah. For the part of me that still wanted to believe in love, even if it had been gutted. And so I walked away. I didn't leave in rage. I left in clarity. And from this point on, I wouldn't let her rewrite what happened. I wouldn't let her paint this as some complicated mistake or emotional spiral or tragic accident. She chose this. And now, I was choosing something else. Peace. The first few weeks after we left were quiet in the strangest way. Not peaceful, not yet, but hollow, like walking through a house you once lived in and realizing you don't recognize the furniture anymore. My father gave us space. He didn't ask questions, didn't push. He set up Noah's mattress on the floor beside the bed I grew up in, and every night I'd hear the slow, steady rhythm of his breathing before I finally drifted off myself. I hadn't slept properly in months. Now I was sleeping, but it was the kind of sleep that felt more like collapsing than resting. Still, it was something. A beginning. Melissa kept trying, of course. She found ways to reach out despite the blocks, emails, messages through mutual friends, a handwritten letter she mailed to my dad's house that I never opened. I didn't respond to any of it. I didn't need more words. I already had her truth. 100 of them, printed out and tucked away in a drawer, a reminder of the version of her I'd lived with, and the person she'd become when I wasn't looking. Noah asked about her sometimes, mostly at bedtime when his guard was down and the lights were off. "Why isn't Mommy here?" he asked once, curled under a blanket shaped like a shark. I didn't lie. I told him we were taking a break, that some families need space to feel better. He nodded, like he understood. Kids don't need every detail. They just need honesty they can hold in their hands without it burning. And I was never going to let him carry the weight of her choices. We stayed with my father for nearly 2 months while I searched for a new place, not just a place to live, but a place to begin again. I found a 2-bedroom rental across town, nothing flashy. Old hardwood floors, creaky cabinets, a patchy backyard, and windows that let in just enough morning light to make it feel alive. I painted Noah's room myself, let him pick the color. He chose a green that looked like fresh grass. Said it reminded him of the park we used to go to on weekends. I put his drawings on the fridge with magnets shaped like fruit and told him this was our home now. Just us. The first time I met Claire, I wasn't looking for anything. Not a replacement. Not a distraction. I was dropping Noah off at school and she was there with her daughter. Same drop-off window, same tired smile. We ended up behind each other in the line at the coffee shop a few days later and shared a laugh when we both ordered the same overly complicated drink. That was it. Simple. Easy. No pressure. Just someone whose voice felt soft in a world that had gotten too loud. Over the next few weeks, we started running into each other more often. She was kind. Thoughtful. Asked about Noah before she asked about me. She never pressed for details, but when I eventually told her gently, carefully what had happened, she didn't flinch or offer hollow sympathy. She just listened. And that was enough. Noah took to her faster than I expected. I thought it might take time, that he might resist someone new, but he didn't. Maybe because Claire never tried to fill a role. She just showed up, at first for playdates at the park, then longer walks, then dinners where she brought dessert and helped with dishes like she'd always been part of the background noise of our lives. One night, after she left, Noah looked at me and said, "I like her." Then he went back to drawing spaceships on the back of a takeout menu like he hadn't just knocked the air out of my lungs. For the first time in a long time, the house felt warm. Lived in. Ours. There were new routines now: Saturday pancakes, Lego nights, Claire dropping off muffins, just because. I wasn't healed, not all the way. But I wasn't bleeding anymore either. Some mornings, I'd catch myself standing at the kitchen sink with a cup of coffee, watching Noah chase the neighbor's dog across the backyard, and I'd feel this strange, quiet thing settle in my chest. Not quite joy. Not yet. But something close. Something like hope. It's been almost a year since that morning in the kitchen, since Noah handed me a phone and unknowingly tore open a truth I wasn't ready to see. A year since I packed a bag, left a note, and walked away from the woman I thought I'd grow old with. Melissa tried, for a while, to reach me. I ignored most of it. The few messages I did read all followed the same script: regret, confusion, nostalgia. She wanted to talk, to explain, to do the work. But you can't rebuild a house with someone who lit the match and watched it burn. I didn't hate her, and I still don't. I think you have to love someone deeply to feel betrayal this sharply. But I let go of the fantasy. I had to. For myself. For Noah. For the man I wanted to be on the other side of all this. Eventually, the messages stopped. The last one came 6 months ago, just a single line. "I'm sorry for all of it. I hope you're okay." I didn't reply. I think that silence said everything I needed it to. We finalized the divorce quietly. No lawyers screaming across conference tables, no custody battles. Just signatures and silence. She didn't fight me for Noah. Maybe some part of her knew she'd already lost what mattered. Or maybe she thought she was doing the noble thing. Either way, I was grateful. I'd already spent too much energy trying to hold together something that was built on lies. Claire is still in our life. We're not rushing anything. No dramatic declarations, no blending families overnight. Just a slow, steady unfolding of something that feels real. She and Noah have a bond that's soft and natural. They bake cookies together. They argue about what movie to watch. She calls him kiddo, and he rolls his eyes but always smiles when she's not looking. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid to imagine it. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, after Noah's asleep and the dishes are done, I sit on the back step with a drink in my hand and just breathe. I think about everything we had, the life Melissa and I built, the memories, the small, beautiful moments that still belong to me even if the person in them doesn't. I used to try to erase it all, to pretend the marriage never happened. But I've stopped doing that. It was real, even if it ended wrong, even if it ended ugly. And Noah came from it, the best part of my life, without question. Healing didn't happen in some big, cinematic moment. It came slowly, in the soft routines, the laughter over spilled pancake batter, the quiet understanding that I could still be a good father, a decent man, a whole person even after being broken. There are still scars. Some mornings, I wake up and feel the ghost of what used to be. But it doesn't haunt me the way it used to. It just reminds me where I've been. I didn't get the life I planned. But I got this one, quiet, honest, hard-earned. I know now that love isn't just what you feel in the good moments. It's how you choose to keep showing up, even after you've been left behind. Noah asked me recently if I still love Mommy. I thought about it, then told him the truth. I loved the version of her I knew. And that's enough. He nodded, didn't ask anything else, just slipped his hand into mine and kept walking. And in that moment, I realized I didn't need closure from her. I already had it. I had him, and I had myself back.